Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, guys. Welcome back. I hope that you're enjoying our episodes. Today, we're going to talk to Kristi Tanner. She is a recovering alcoholic. And I know you might be like, yeah, I don't need that. But here's the deal. We are going to talk about her journey and getting sober. And that started on July 6th of 2019. I think that's an important date for Kristi and also an important date for all of us to know that we have to start somewhere if alcoholism is something that we are struggling with. But also, I hope that these words are something that you can listen to because you're going to have somebody in your life, whether you already do or will in the future, with struggling with alcohol consumption. And I want you to have the words and the knowledge about Kristi's story and what it might do for you to be able to have those conversations with them. But also, we're going to try to cover some things that we might talk to our teenagers about or our younger kids about with substance use. So with that, let's get to Kristi. I'm so excited that you agreed to be on this podcast. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. So we are going to be talking about substance use and addiction and kind of your journey. So talk about, how did you know that your alcohol use was like unhealthy? Like what came to your mind or what was going on in your life that brought that to your attention?
Um, Gosh, I didn't really consider myself an unhealthy drinker for a long time. I thought that I was doing what everyone else was doing, which was drinking and partying and a little bit in high school. And then in college, it was like, whoa, no parents. This is
Yeah.
crazy. And what I saw around me was people acting the same way. And then the hangovers and stuff were sort of joked about, right? It was like, oh, that was so funny. You're so drunk. Where did you end up? Um, a lot of people seem to sort of drop that behavior after college. You know, get to the real world, get a job, have some kids, get married, whatever the things. And for whatever reason, I didn't change. I had 4 kids. I got married. I had a really incredibly busy job, big job. I did a ton of traveling. Um, and I didn't change the amount I drank at all. I changed when I drank.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't think it was unhealthy because I thought that it was showing that I was sophisticated. I was successful. I was out at happy hour. I was showing up to the places where people were. Um, and so for a long time, it was like I was a high functioning alcoholic
Mm-hmm.
and it looked okay. And as long as it looked okay from the outside, people were hesitant to bring it up. And
Mm-hmm.
I was extremely defensive. And I'm like, I'm sorry, do you not drink on the weekends? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you do? Okay. So for a long time, it was just like, well, oh, but you got so drunk. And it's like, well, okay. But what started happening was the more kids I had, then I started working. I stopped working and I was just at home.
Mm-hmm.
And staying home with kids can be very isolating. And when I felt isolated, I would turn on the TV and drink with the Real Housewives. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, perfect. Here's some friends. Um, but I did not want to look at it. I started having some serious consequences pretty early on. I sort of always did. I blacked out almost every time I drank. I did not know that that was bad. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that you could drink and have a drink and then be done. Because once
Mm-hmm.
I started, there was literally no off switch, just
Mm-hmm.
at all. Even if I would say, okay, I drank last night, so I'm only going to have 2 glasses tonight. And I'd
Mm-hmm.
go to dinner, but the 2 glasses I would have as cocktails before dinner. And then if everyone's drinking with dinner, I'm not going to not drink. So once I
Mhm.
started, it was just off to the races. Um, what basically happens is drinking is fun,
Mhm.
and then drinking is fun with consequences, and then drinking is only consequences.
Hmm.
That's kind of the pattern for me.
Yeah.
And I would say there's sort of four C's to addiction, which are consumption, control, compulsion, and consequences.
Mhm.
And it's kind of the slippery slope of where do you get off the ride?
Mhm.
Um, when you consume, can you control it? My answer was no, I never could, but I
Mhm.
didn't know that I should.
Mhm.
I thought, oh, I'm around friends, I can do whatever, I'm going home, I have a babysitter. Um, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that I felt like crap every day. It
Mhm.
made being a mom so hard. I had very little patience with all of these tiny kids. Um, and when people started talking to me about, hey, Kristi, like we're getting kind of concerned. You fell last night, you blacked out in the Uber, you threw up, whatever it was. And I was like, well, haven't you done those things? And so then I stopped going out, right? So
Mhm.
it's like I would be very conscientious about what I was drinking around other people to make sure that I looked normal and like within the realm of acceptable.
Mhm.
But then I would go home and finish drinking in the closet until I passed out because I couldn't stop. So it'd be like, oh, we'd be out to dinner, have a great night. I'll leave. And then I would stop at the liquor store. It wasn't even a will I, it's when will I?
Mhm.
Um, and it wasn't a conscientious choice either. It became just this compulsion, this need to just make sure I had more. Because if I didn't have more, that would be scary. If I
Mhm.
needed it and I did not have it. And I realized that alcohol was becoming the only thing in my life that I needed and wanted and thought about. It consumed my thoughts all day, my dreams, my nightmares, like they all had to do with drinking.
Mhm.
I carried so much shame about the secret life that I felt like I had that nobody knew about, but now people were kind of knowing about it. Um, and I decided I wanted to stop drinking years, years before I was able to stop.
Mhm.
I think probably the first time I got really serious about it was in 2016 after we had two kids and our marriage was in a really tough spot. And my husband was traveling a lot, and we had a son in the NICU, and I did not get the support I needed. And after dealing with all of that, my husband said to me, like, I'm really concerned about your drinking. And I was like, well, maybe we should just get a divorce because I didn't want my drinking to be affected by my marriage.
Yeah.
That's really scary, right? Like I was putting my alcohol consumption over my marriage, my kids, my job, my connections. I didn't have integrity anymore. I meant what I said when I said it, but I could not follow through.
Yeah.
I could not follow through. So it's like when you start making rules for yourself about your drinking and breaking your own rules, that's when you know that you're starting to have a problem.
Sure.
Nobody is saying, Bryce, you can only have one glass of wine. But if
Mhm.
you say to yourself, I am only going to have one glass of wine tonight, and you can't do that, that's really an invitation to get serious about what role this, alcohol plays in your life. Is it social? Is it an addiction? Is it an escape? Is it a
Mhm.
coping skill? What is hiding underneath? What is it masking that you're not willing to look at?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to look because it's messy. You have
Yeah.
to look at yourself. you
Yeah.
know, but it's, yeah, so it was a messy, non-linear thing. And then eventually there was an event in 2019. So I went to rehab for 1 month in 2017. And I went because I had gotten really drunk and ended up like on a street, passed out somewhere, and ended up in the ER in the psych ward. And my husband said, he can't come home. We've got 3 kids under 4. Sorry. And I was like, all good. I'll go to California and get a tan. I'll take a little mommy vacay. Like I really thought it was kind of a joke. And at that time, I was not able to be honest with the therapist at the rehab. I was like, I drink champagne every night, and people are like, so? And I was like, that's exactly what I'm saying, you know, but I wasn't, it's not even the amount you drink, it's why you drink. And that was the shift when I went back to rehab in 2019. I had gotten 2 DUIs in the same week in July. I got one the 3rd of July in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was kind of like a slap on the wrist. And it was like, oops, you're in the drunk tank. And I came home and I was like, I'm never drinking again. That was so embarrassing. That was so awful. Like, oh my God, I've never been to jail. That's terrifying. And I didn't make it 24 hours, which was like shocking to me after this traumatizing experience. And 2 days later, I got into a big fight with my husband. He took the kids to the lake house, and I was like, I'm not going to be home alone on the 4th of July. I'm going to go to my friend's lake house. I'm just going to bring this bottle of wine with me for her as a welcome gift. Bryce, I didn't make it to her house. I drank the wine in my car. I was listening to a recovery podcast about how to get and stay sober. And I started bawling because I was like, I can't do it. I've been trying for 3 years and I'm horrible and I'm a liar and nobody trusts me and they shouldn't. I felt so bad about myself. So I was driving and I ended up pulling off my car in the middle of Gary, Indiana, not quite off the highway all the way. So I was already pulled over, but the police very quickly found my car parked in the highway and found a very drunk me in the front seat, sobbing. And I went to jail on the 5th floor of Gary, Indiana. And the things that I saw in those 36 hours were some of the most heartbreaking, terrifying parts of like what addiction does to people, and that it's still rampant even inside jail. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But after that happened, I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm never going to see my kids again. Nobody's ever going to trust me again. I'm never going to have friends again. My parents will never speak to me again. I'll have to move away and like become a silent nobody and never show my face. Cause like, what mom of 4 does this? And I didn't have any grace for myself. I didn't have people telling me I could do it. People were telling me to drink less, not stop drinking.
Yeah.
Just figure you need to know your limit, cut it off. I don't have a limit. So telling somebody who's an addict, whether or not they know they're an addict, a limit, that's not a thing. My limit is 0. Just that's my limit, but I didn't know. So I went to rehab for 2 months. I left my 4 kids at home with a nanny. They were 5.5, 4, 2.5, and 6 months. And I went away for 60 days and they took me off all of my meds. And I was like, what is happening? They tell you what to eat, what to sleep. You do therapy for 12 hours a day. You have an exercise schedule. You have check-ins. It was the most incredible and the most heart-wrenching experience. It was so hard to be away. I had so many big emotions. I was really scared. The first month in rehab, I tried to be a good rehab student. I wanted to get an A plus at rehab. And then at the end of that month, I was like, they're like, you're not, we don't really think you're ready to go. And I'm like, I'm not ready to go. And it was like, there's just so much more underneath this, the addiction, the substance, the alcohol, whatever it is, that's the tip of the iceberg. And when you remove that, then you find all the rest of the stuff that is hiding. And I needed that amount of support. I needed that amount of support. Not everyone does, but I did. And I think that's probably the bravest thing anyone could do if you're struggling, is to take time for yourself, make the time, make it work, because this will save your life and change it for the rest of your life, your family's lives, your children's lives. The effect that it's had on my relationship with my kids is astronomical. We have never been so close. They know about my alcoholism, and it's not a weird thing for us to talk about. So we went out for tacos like a week ago, and my 7-year-old was like, what did it say? Tacos, amigos, and tequila. And he goes, what's tequila? And I was like, oh, that's alcohol. And he was like, we are not allowed to go here. Mommy doesn't drink alcohol. And I was like, oh, Hudson, I'm not going to drink any alcohol. Are you? And he was like, ew, no. And I was like, great, we can still go and choose not to drink. It's those kind of conversations starting at age 5 and 7, and awareness of alcohol as a choice that some people make and some people don't. And what does it do to them? And how do they act? And, like I'm like, I would never let you get in a car with somebody who's had a glass of wine. That doesn't make me feel good, And so it's changed their awareness. It's changed our open communication. We have family meetings. We have family resets. I know how to apologize as a mom, which makes parenting a beautiful thing instead of such a struggle. It's been a really incredibly healing journey and hard. But I think the best part about it is that I didn't keep it a secret. There's so much support. There's so many people going through this kind of thing that are living in your neighborhood, that are at your church, that are in your kids' sports events. Like, they're out there. And if you just say, I'm not drinking, or I'm working on this, or I'm choosing a healthy lifestyle, somebody else is going to say, me too. And that's how you start finding community.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah. Can I stop and just say, Kristi, I think you are incredibly brave and so strong for doing this. Like, this is awesome. Like, I'm so proud of you for doing that and being real with yourself. And I'm sorry that it took so much to get there, but you needed that, right? Like, unfortunately, sometimes everybody's bottom is different. And sometimes we have to get to the place where we say, I can't do this anymore. This is not the life that I'm meant to live. And I'm so glad that you are on the recovering side of that you're embracing this journey. And also, like, I'm a huge advocate for talking to our kids about everything. And people will say to me, like, don't do that, you're going to mess up your kids. And I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm a trained therapist. I've been kids forever. And I really think that having these conversations, right? Like, can you imagine what it would have been like if you were, excuse me, 5 or 7-year-old and your mom had said to you, like, hey, here, let's start this conversation around alcohol. Let's not make it just this grown-up drink that you can't have. Let's not make it a forbidden fruit. Let's just talk about it and talk about what happens, because then we have this like conscious awareness of the choice that we can make. And not saying that this was your parents' fault or anything like that.
No.
Just that, wouldn't it have been cool if we could all have this conversation with our kids around alcohol, whether we're a parent who chooses not to drink and we could talk about why we choose not to, or a parent who is choosing to consume alcohol, right? And we're talking to our kids about what is around that and why, and also like talking about what it's like to be drunk, right? We were having there's this alcohol called amarula, which is like this fruit from Africa, I believe. Anyways, and it gets fermented, and in Africa, there are elephants and giraffes and monkeys who will wait for the fruit to fall off of the amarula tree, and then they drink it or take it, eat it, and then it ferments in their bellies, and then they're drunk. So we were watching this with our 12-year-old, and we were like, being aware of like, do you even know what drunk is? And so we got to have this conversation, but I was like, we've had these conversations, but that's not something that he's been necessarily exposed to. But I was like, this is a conversation that we really need to be having. He's 12, but on average, by sophomore year of high school, 50% of kids have had a drink. And by the time they graduate from high school, I think it's just like a couple of percentages have not had a drink, right?
Correct.
So to think that your child is not going to consume alcohol is unlikely in that period of time, even though it's illegal. That is not a deterrent, right? And then when they go to college, they have, pretty much free access. At some point in college, you turn 21, but there are lots of people who are older than you. And, there are ways that teenagers and young adults are able to get access to alcohol. And if their relationship with that isn't healthy, excuse me, we just, find ourselves in this position where it is our coping skill. So yes, this is a beautiful story, and I am so glad that you're on the other side of this. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So what do you think? You've supported a lot of people with your blog or your Instagram and talking about your story, which I think is also beautiful for other people to see that they're not alone. This sense of community is so important. What do you think are some common themes or things that people go through that are, you could say, lots of people have an experience in this with trying to get sober or being an alcoholic or an addict? What do you see in the moms or dads that you have talked to or are supported in this journey that seems to be a common theme? I just want everybody to kind of hear different stories or things that they might be able to recognize in themselves or not recognize in themselves to evaluate their relationship with alcohol.
Sure. The first theme would be denial, probably. I think a lot of people stay there for a long time for fear of everything, right? Fear of knowing themselves. I think people go through a lot of secretive like shame and feel like if they're going to be honest about it, people will be upset. So that's a fear of like, okay, I think I have a problem, but now I don't want to tell people because I haven't been honest. And now I'm going to hurt these people's feelings. To that, I would say, you're not going to hurt their feelings. It's going to make your relationship so much more intimate, so much more close, and allow the other person or people to support you.
Because they're seeing it anyways, right? The truth is that when we get to the point that we probably have an issue with alcohol, it's not like everybody isn't noticing something, right? There is, even if it's just the secretiveness, right? Like maybe they don't even see you drunk, but it's like that your behavior is not usual. It's not, something seems unhealthy or right. It could be passing out everywhere, blacking out or whatever, but it may not be that like to that level, right, for that person, but they're seeing it. So whether you're honest with yourself to be honest with them or not, they probably have picked up that something's not quite right.
For sure. There were so many people that when I finally went to rehab that were like, I have been praying that you would figure this out. And I was scared to talk to you about it. I was scared to talk to you about it. I was angry that people were calling me out on my bad behavior. I was like, Who do you think you are? And I wasn't ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that scares a lot of people, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was drinking, I was full of shame and rage, like kind of
Yeah.
this rage against alcohol, against society, against myself, my inability to control it. It made me feel stupid. It made me feel really weak. And I felt like I'm not smart enough to beat this. There is no smart enough to addiction. There's not you. I went and got knowledge at my first rehab. I could recite the entire thing to you. I could tell you all the bad reasons that
Mm-hmm.
you should not drink. And I still couldn't not drink. It's not that I didn't know, it's that I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And you can't, I don't believe anyone can get sober for someone else.
No.
And
No.
I think a lot of people try for
Mm-hmm.
people that they love. They try for their kids, they try for their wives and their husbands and their parents and their whoever else. But until you try because you care about like this body, this temple, this person, yourself, it will not stick.
No.
You will find yourself in a situation and give yourself a justification for the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would just say it's denial, it's secrets, it's extremely non-linear. It's a lot of I'm never drinking again. Then you see them drinking again. I'm going to take 3 weeks off. They only take 1 week off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to drink until the wedding this summer. And a week later, it's Friday. These are all signs that people are becoming aware of their relationship with alcohol. And it's hard to control. And a lot of that has to do with who you're around.
Yes.
So, what are your social situations looking like? What does your house look like? Do you have alcohol in your home? Um, for the longest time, I came home and the first thing I did forever was have a glass of wine. I just thought that's what every single human being, adult, did. I thought it was like, oh my God, the work day's over and relaxation time is on, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted it to signal to myself, like, you're off the clock, you can relax.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped doing that for me a long time ago, a
Yeah.
long time ago. But I had this habit and I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
stop it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, I don't know if that helped at all. Did I
Yeah.
answer
No,
the
yes.
question?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yes, yeah, you're doing great. There's no right answer, right? I think it's
Yeah.
just because everybody's story is their story, but I think there are themes when we're on the outside of it, we're not in the addiction, that we
Hmm.
can see that seem to be commonalities, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes people are listening to this and have a spouse or a friend and they're like, oh yes, that for that person, right? So they
Hmm.
can pick up on that piece.
Yep.
And sometimes when you're actually the addict, you're not there yet. You can't, you know, you're not honest with yourself or anybody else.
Correct.
You know that, you know, one drink always leads to another. And it's about getting to the root of what the issue is, right? And that's hard
Hmm.
because once you open up, right, Pandora's box, once you open it up, you can't put it back in. And so if you acknowledge what it is, then you're going to have to actually work on it. And
For
that is
sure.
so scary. And a lot of what keeps people from engaging any process, whether it's therapy or having a conversation with their spouse, not alcohol related, just in
Hmm.
life, right? That if you
Hmm.
open it up and you acknowledge that this is a problem, you can't put it back. Like you've put
Correct.
words to it, right? And
Hmm.
this is it. But like sometimes that's the best power. It's like you did
It
open it,
is.
right?
Hmm.
And I often find people are so conflict avoidant, and
Hmm.
I find that conflict is not really the problem, it's how you handle it that's the problem, right? But
Hmm.
it's actually an opportunity to
Of
solve
course.
something. And so
Yes.
that is such a great gift that we can give to ourselves and our kids and our spouse and our friends, right? If we have something to talk about
Hmm.
or a problem, let's do it. But it's hard,
Yes.
and I totally acknowledge that that is true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, what do you want people struggling with addiction to know? So, like we talked about your journey and these themes that we see and how you got to where you are. But like, what do you want people that are actively in addiction right now to know?
I want them to know that there's hope.
Mhm.
I want them to know that there's no wrong way to recover. I don't believe there's a certain right path. I don't believe there's a certain right time. I believe that you can make this choice and it will be hard
Mhm.
and it will be worth it. It will change your life. Um, I want people to know that when they choose to work on the hardest thing that they have, that it grows confidence that you've never known. I feel freedom in a way that I have never, this is going to make me emotional. I've never felt free from society or being a woman or a mother or how I'm supposed to be and do and act, what I'm supposed to say.
Mhm.
And when I got sober, I let all these labels and boxes go. And I was willing to be like, I am an alcoholic.
Mhm.
This is my box. And you know what? That was powerful to claim. It was so powerful to be like, this is me, and this is where I'm standing, and this is a part of me. And it
Mhm.
defined me for a very, very long time in a negative way. And now I'm going to choose to let it define me in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, you can go through your whole life trying to tell yourself, I don't have a drinking problem, and managing the unmanageable and controlling the uncontrollable. Or you could choose to try sobriety. What are these people talking about? Why are these addicts staying sober?
Yeah.
If it was not worth it, we would all be drinking.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point.
I would not still be sober if it didn't improve my life.
Hmm.
My life did not magically get better because I got sober. It
Hmm.
got much harder at first, and I needed that. I needed to take responsibility for every single part of my life. And when you get to do that kind of work, when you get to work with incredible therapists, when you get to live sober, it's not that I have to live sober. You don't have to live sober. You have a choice once
Hmm.
you're over 21.
Yeah.
I get to live sober.
Yeah.
And
Which means you're
that
present. Yeah.
I haven't missed anything.
Hmm.
I haven't missed anything in 4 years. I feel like I've learned a billion times more in the last 5 years than I have in the last 35 because I'm really here and
Hmm.
I'm really paying attention. And I don't care that I'm not at every party. I thought that the FOMO was going to kill me. Like,
Hmm.
I wanted to be there and do the things. Bryce, I want peace. I want serenity. I
Hmm.
want um to watch sunrises with my kids. You know, these are not things that were on my radar when I was drinking. I wanted to be partying, I wanted a babysitter, and I wanted to be out. And I
Hmm.
wanted to be dressed up and drunk. And now I want to be very present, very involved, very aware, and use a platform that once kept me like a prisoner
Hmm.
as something that can be this huge gift of freedom. And there's no wrong way to do it. You can DM people on Instagram, you can go to AA, you can find a therapist, you can go to um, refuge recovery, you can go to celebrate recovery. There are so many pathways and support groups and ways to get sober. There is harm reduction. The first thing you have to do is be honest with yourself
Hmm.
and decide if that's what you want. Do you want to live an honest life for yourself? And
Yeah.
I did. I really did. And it's hard, but it's so good. Like I've never been so happy because I'm not ashamed of what I did yesterday. I
Hmm.
don't have to apologize. I have authority in my own autonomy
Hmm.
for the first time in years. And it feels really good. So I just want people never to give up. I tried and failed for years, years. I went to rehab not once, but twice. Like there is no don't stop, keep trying.
Hmm.
Like, but open your mouth. You cannot get sober if you keep it a secret.
Yeah, you got to put words to it. That's great advice. So I know that this isn't really possible. I'm going to ask you this question, and it's kind of unfair, but the reason why I'm asking you this question is because I'm thinking about what you might say to this that might be something that we could have a conversation with our teenagers about. And so that's the reason why I'm asking you this question. But so my next question is, if you could say something to yourself when you were back, when alcohol started becoming unhealthy, right? What advice or words would you want to tell yourself that you think could have made a difference? Do you think there is such words?
uh, I don't know. Are there such words? I think the only thing that would have, it's like if somebody would have invited me instead of saying, "Oh, you idiot, you're hungover," duh, um, to be like, "How was last night?
Mm-hmm.
How did it feel after your first drink? Like, when did you have your second drink?" I mean, really just instead of being like shaming for what didn't go right, like
Yeah.
think back to like, how did I feel when I had the first drink? Did I feel euphoric?
Mm-hmm.
Was I excited? How did I
Mm-hmm.
feel after the second drink? Can I remember the third, fourth, 17th drink? When, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like thinking back to how does alcohol make you feel? Are you drinking because you want to fit in?
Mm-hmm.
Did you make this choice or did peer pressure make this choice?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't drink until I was a sophomore in high school. I drank one time and I blacked out at a party, threw up everywhere. My parents had to come get me. It was extremely embarrassing. Um, but my parents were like, you're now going to sit here at the breakfast table and you have to sit here. And I was just miserable, but they were just like letting me sit in my hangover. There wasn't a conversation about why did you choose to drink? This is clearly illegal because you're 14.
Yeah.
So I think opening a conversation rather than giving consequences would
Yeah.
be my biggest advice. Like, soften. As a
Mm-hmm.
parent, I know it's got to be, I can't even imagine, and I know I'll get to experience it in a couple
Mm-hmm.
of years. Um, but try and soften and try
Yeah.
and give grace. And when I think if I knew that I could always call my parents if I needed a ride. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a really safety thing for me. But what I wish we also had was a follow-up conversation the next day.
Yeah.
Um,
Curiosity. I love this. I mean, this is really my parenting style, but also what I'm hopeful that other parents will pick up on is getting
yes,
curious about
yes.
what is going on. Like, why are we drinking? How
Hmm.
much are we drinking? Like, what do you remember about that? How did you feel? Those are fantastic questions. So I think that is totally something that teenage parents of teenagers, right,
Hmm.
can talk about with their kids. And even like if they said they're not drinking, talk about why. Why are you not
Right.
drinking? Right. Like, or what's motivating you to not
Hmm.
drink? Or
Yep.
if they do choose, like what motivated you to drink, right? And
Hmm.
getting to that part, the basic foundation of that consumption or non-consumption, right? To support that. And then following up, right? To say like,
Yes.
okay, so last week we were talking about not drinking, right? Or a month ago. So where are we at now? Right? Like,
Hmm.
how are things going? Or there's that party, like how did
Yes.
you manage to not drink? Right? Like
Hmm.
what is so strong in you that's choosing that or compliant with that directive for yourself. And if you chose to drink like I did, then talking about that, right? Instead of shaming, get
Yep.
curious, because I
Yep.
think then open communication, right? So important.
Number
But
one.
two, we're helping them to be grown-ups, because eventually that's what we have to go to be. And so when they learn about themselves and we're teaching them to process those questions, they're going to do it for themselves too, right? To be a little bit more insightful versus defensive, potentially, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great
Definitely.
advice. Okay.
And then the only other thing I would say is just like as parents, be conscientious about the alcohol that you have in your
Mm-hmm.
home, what when you're drinking, why you're drinking, because your kids watch you.
Yeah.
I watched my parents. My parents were successful, and I thought that success meant you sat outside on the porch with a bottle of red wine and listened to jazz music.
Mm-hmm.
I every night. And that looked amazing. But what I didn't see was any nights not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my goal, kind of. It was like, I want to be successful enough, whatever that means, to relax and have nothing to worry about and
Mm-hmm.
listen to music with this person that I love and drink
Yeah.
some drinks. Other things like drinking and driving. Do you have two glasses of wine and then drive your kids home? I used to do it all the time. I just don't know if we need to. If
Mm-hmm.
we don't want our kids drinking and driving, we shouldn't be drinking and driving. If you've got a softball practice for your kids, don't bring beer. Okay. That's like a big thing. It's like, this might not be water, and it's not. And like, I don't think that's funny. I think that's scary. So kind of debunking these sort of cutesy parts of drinking that have come out, especially in this mommy wine culture,
Mm-hmm.
um, just making them not cute. Like
Yeah.
being aware that like your glass of wine, your kids may not notice and it may not affect you, but maybe just have it after dinner. Maybe have it once they're asleep. Don't have it while you're actively parenting and driving.
Yeah.
They're aware of what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, whether or not they know it, they're
Yeah.
watching you.
Yeah. That's great advice, to just be conscious of what we're doing too, because they are looking to us, right, for
For
advice.
everything.
And yes, and so then if we're modeling that, it makes sense why they would think like, okay, I can finally do this thing that's been so off limits,
Yep.
right? But it's
And it's
not
going to
like,
bring me
yeah,
everything, right? Won't
yes,
it bring
yeah,
me joy?
yeah, happiness,
Yeah.
right? Success. Yeah, that's such a great perspective to think about. Well, I mean, I feel like my last question was going to be like, what do you want people to take away? But I think that was all really fantastic advice. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Kristi, for this. I mean,
Oh,
you have been incredibly transparent and honest. And I think that's so important when we're helping people to like recognize their own behaviors, is to say like, hey, I didn't do this so well, but I want you to know about
hmm,
it so that you can also do this if this is part of your journey. So thank you for
absolutely.
that.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. It's been such an honor. And thank you for asking me. I never planned on being this person or like sharing my story, but it allows me to feel like my addiction is now a service. And
Yeah.
it makes me feel really good to know that hopefully this will reach people that are questioning their relationship with alcohol and just give them hope that they can make a different choice if they really want to.
Yeah.
Like it's
Absolutely.
really possible. And I'm just grateful for what you're doing for the podcast and with our kids. I think it's so important. I just and being sober has only helped me get more curious and open with my kids, and I just love it. So I've really enjoyed our time together.
Yes, absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll have you back to talk about something else, because this was lovely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks. I am so thankful for Kristi and her transparency and sharing her journey and struggle, and also her recovery and success. I don't know about you, but that was all incredibly powerful. And there were a couple times that I got goosebumps just listening to her story and where she's been and the journey and how successful she's become. So, with that, I'll just conclude to say, don't give up. If you love somebody or you're struggling with alcohol, don't give up. There's always another day. And there are always people to come around you and support you and love you. And your kids will be forever grateful for you being able to show up and be there for them. And if alcohol is getting in the way of that, let's change that and let's get support. And I'm going to include a bunch of resources in the show notes. So take a look at that. If you're loving what we're doing, please like and follow us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. With that, I will say goodbye. Have a great week. We are looking forward to seeing you next week. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.